Right, just recorded me eating. Very nice. Okay, it is Sunday, and the sun went down a couple of hours ago, and I thought it high time to finally shoot an update for you guys. It's been a very productive few days. We've had great weather the last couple of days, but I have to start this video off with a bit of a failure. I tried to do the rear brakes on the car, which don't necessarily need to be done, so I don't feel that bad about leaving it off. But I bought all the tools to do it properly. I bought the big socket that you're meant to use to get the drum brakes off. I bought the pads, I bought the specialist tools to center it and everything like that. And no matter what I could try, I just couldn't get the drums off. And the longer that it took me to get the drums off, the more I sort of came to the conclusion that I might be doing more harm than good, and maybe this was better off being left to a bit of a specialist. I haven't done drum brakes on any car in probably getting on 8 years now, so I didn't really want to make any mistakes on that end in this car. So what you're seeing here is footage of a task that I never ended up completing, topped with the fact that as I tried to lower the car again, it fell off its axle stands and sort of clintered off to the right a bit dramatically, and the jack sort of wrenched one of the sills out of place and it landed on its drums. And after that incident, I sort of lost confidence to carry on, so too bad. Managed to lift the car again, and the sill wasn't too badly damaged. I hammered it back into place, and whatever, it's just going to end up being something else to paint. Wasn't going to completely waste my morning though. As I had the wheels off, I thought I'd do a small sort of restoration of the back of the wheel, so we'll break out the angle grinder one more time and get rid of the bulk of the surface rust on the back of the wheels. I wasn't looking for a perfect finish here, so all you're looking to do in this case is really just to clean off the surface and make sure you're either looking at bare metal or clean paint on top of which to apply stone chip. So I didn't really want to put more than one coat on it, just enough to kind of protect it from the elements for another couple of years was really all I was looking for, and rinse and repeat, and we have both of the wheels sort of semi-restored. And now we get to the really sort of meat and potatoes of why I'm here. The bulk of what I really want to get done this week is paint repair. Put the wheels back on, and then we start with the disassembly of the car to strip it down into a kind of paint repair state. Once I stuck the wheels back on though, I felt a little bit childish, and I had the drone with me, so I thought I'd go out for a little bit of a test drive before I started stripping paint off of it. Here's that. It wouldn't be a YouTube video without a bit of gratuitous drone footage though, would it? So, right, enough of that. We're pulling alongside the house here for what will be the standing spot for the car for the days to come. Now, if you're an Instagram follower, you probably don't imagine there's that much wrong with the paint. Well, here's where I'm going to shock you with some close-ups of what's happened here. So the bulk of this is just a consequence of poor prep work on the paint job that the car got roughly 2 years ago. There's a bunch of spots now where the paint is becoming delaminated from the surface underneath. And what that's doing is it's creating these sort of pockets for air and moisture to get into and sort of settle, which will one day become rust. So it's quite important that we get that out of the way now. So start off with a simple clean, obviously, and then we're going to get aggressive with a flathead screwdriver. I wanted to get underneath all the paint that wasn't perfectly attached to the surface and just scratch it all off. See, what you're looking at here is, of course, it's all going to be fine. This is the movies, isn't it? But at the time of doing this, there was no real way of knowing that any of this was really going to work out for me. So it was a real kind of point of no return moment where I kind of feared for, am I ruining my car here? So for the squeamish, look away. So after the worst of it was chipped away, it was time to smooth it off with some wet and dry sandpaper, obviously. Started off with mostly 240 grit. Now all edited up like this, it looks much quicker than it actually was, but you'll notice in this later shot here, we are coming to dusk on this day because getting this right really took all day. Just smoothing off all of the smoothing the lower layer of the paint into the upper layer of the paint, so that it wouldn't show up as an obvious sort of repair after it was all done. If I had to say anything about amateur paint work or sort of rattle can spray work that I was doing, is there's no real sort of technical skill involved, but the quality of the paint that you're going to get is sort of directly proportional to the amount of time that you put in it. So I could do all of these repairs really in the space of about an hour if I wanted to do a terrible job of it. But equally, I could also be here for an entire month, just sanding everything just to the nth degree to get it absolutely perfect. Once that was sort of smooth and clean, by the evening I was ready to hit it with its first coat of primer and wait for that to dry and rub that down into this sort of dramatic texture that you're looking at here. Again, this was still a point where I didn't know if any of this was going to end up looking correct, so it was a real kind of leap of faith on my part, I think. And then we get to the first coat of actual color paint, super fast applied. You don't really want to stick too much on the first coat. So that's why that looks like that. And then 4 or 5 coats later, you can start being a little bit more sort of slow and deliberate. But as I say, this is a very, very long process. If I wanted to do a terrible job of it, just stick it on like in one coat, and yeah, we've all seen shoddy repair jobs like that, and I was not going to do that to my own car. I'm not being paid by the hour, or not being paid anything, so might as well take your time. Next day, rinse and repeat on the right-hand side of the car, and I thought I'd break out a little bit of a secret weapon, this electrical sander, because I thought it might get the job done quicker, but it really didn't, to be honest. It's not really a precision instrument. It's good for taking enormous amounts of paint off of large surfaces, but I'll see a lot of this is in the kind of nooks and crannies, and it requires the kind of precision you can only really get with a sheet of wet and dry and your own fingers. So really there wasn't that much achieved with the electrical sander. I'd still recommend you just go ahead and do it by hand if you're really looking for a sort of meticulous quality job. And right here behind the rear door we come to our first little spot where we need filler. Now I would really want to minimize the amount of filler that I use on this car into the future, but this was a very small hole, so I thought no harm done really in just using a little bit there. So I stripped the paintwork around it to where it was bare metal, and then I just needed the tiniest amount of filler there we see mixed on the instruction manual for the product, and just rub just enough to fill in with your little spatula that you get in it. And if you feel confident enough, I have no real problems with just rubbing it in with my fingers like that. I would recommend that you try and leave as little excess as possible, because as much excess as you use is what you're going to need to then remove in the sanding process afterwards, which is time you don't really want to waste. So highlighted in these couple of clips here are the sort of pitfalls that you want to look out for when it comes to doing an amateur and occasionally impatient paint job. This is clear coat here that I've sprayed over the top of the white paint to give it a kind of gloss finish, and as you can see here, this is the result of laying on a bit too thick of a coat at once, just trying to rush the end of the day, and you get these little drips forming. And no one likes the look of that, but no harm done really. It's only clear coat, so I will rub that down at a future date, but it's just something you kind of want to avoid. So I think what I'm trying to get at this series really is, see, a lot of people sort of want classic cars. Classic cars, I would say, they're kind of like puppies. Like everyone wants one. Everyone sort of imagines that life with one is just all sort of bliss and joy and all that kind of thing. And it's a lot of fun, but like a puppy, a classic car takes an enormous amount of time and responsibility and workload. And I think what Instagram pages like mine sort of do is give off this false impression that this is just sort of easy and bliss. And I want to mitigate my own contribution to that sort of misinformation by going in depth on this series, as YouTube allows you to do, and it sort of give you the nitty gritty of what it's like, what it takes to kind of own one of these things. It's not an enormous amount of work. I do this sort of work probably once or twice a year in terms of just sort of preventative maintenance and small little restoration jobs. But it is work, and they are temperamental, these old cars, and they're simply not going to be the same experience as owning a new car. So you got to know what you're letting yourself in for. It really is like a puppy. Anyway. So thanks again for watching part 2. Part 3 is probably going to come sometime later in the week when I've got the time to shoot and edit it. But thanks for watching and stick around. There'll be more to come. Bye-bye.